Hi class, I'm back again. So we left off talking about communication climates, and I want to just review them for you so we're all on the same page and understand what they mean. So the idea behind a group climate is that how we communicate contributes to how we feel in the group, right? How we feel, whether we feel comfortable or safe, all of that is related to our group climate. Like our communication creates an atmosphere, a tone. And there are different ways that we can contribute positively and negatively. And we looked at that, right? We looked at evaluation versus description. Evaluation is talking about evaluating the situation, kind of judging it, versus description is describing how you feel about something, not judging it, but just describing, coming from I statements, using I statements to talk about what's going on with you. Evaluation usually uses words like you, and puts people on the defensive. So you want to use I statements. Don't use you statements, but use I statements. Also, control versus problem orientation. Control is when you're trying to control the situation. You're focused on, you kind of talk down to people. You feel like if you're the recipient of it, you feel like someone's acting like a parent to a child, kind of controlling the situation. What happens is when you act like that, it limits communication. People stop talking. It closes communication down. Problem orientation is where you're focused on the needs of everyone and you want to have a consensus, like you want everybody on board. It's more inclusive rather than just getting your way. Strategy versus spontaneity. Now, in this way, it's kind of like, I'm going to pause for 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay. Sorry about that. I wanted to pause for a second because I noticed that my juice is running on my computer and I thought it was plugged in, but it wasn't. So strategy versus spontaneity. Again, we're still talking about group climate. Strategy is when you're literally trying to manipulate a situation to get what you want. Sometimes we do this consciously, sometimes we do this unconsciously. Spontaneity is allowing things to evolve naturally, for people to come to their own conclusions, to be open-minded, okay? Not focused on making sure that everyone else in the group is happy, right? And strategy, oftentimes when we do that, it's because we're afraid. Neutrality versus empathy. Neutrality is indifference. Indifference just puts people off. When you're different, you're not caring. Empathy is showing that you care, showing that you're interested, communicating care to your group mates. Superiority versus equality. That's an easy one, and it's exactly what it is. It's like communicating in a way that you act like you're better than someone or as if you know everything. And equality means assuming that you don't know everything and that you need the help of others. Okay, that's different than when I tell you as a group to, look at what talents you have in the group and use them accordingly. It doesn't mean that anyone's better. Is that some people have experience and talents in areas that other people don't. Okay, that's looking at how you can help each other make the group better by acknowledging that. And finally, certainty versus provisionalism is, when you're sure of something, when you know something for sure, or you act like something's not going to work before you have all the information, in a group situation, it's not helpful. It's not helpful. It's actually more helpful to be open and to let the group decide what's best, or not cut off your nose to spite your face. It's like you don't need to know. You don't need to be, so that certainty can actually, again, close communication down, kind of like control. So you want to just remain as open as you can be. Okay, now let's get to the PowerPoint, back to the PowerPoint where we are. There's that. Okay, so we're going to now talk about verbal communication and nonverbal communication. And we've been talking about that, but I'm going to focus more on what we consider verbal communication. How do we know it's verbal communication? So defining it. Remembering that language is symbolic, we talked about that. What does it mean to guard against bypassing? Well, bypassing really means this assumption. When you bypass, you assume that everyone has the same meaning about things. And what we know already, right, is that because of our lived experience, which involves our gender, our race, our community, our culture, it could be our religion, all those things help us to come to our own ideas and beliefs and perceptions of things, all influence that. So you can't assume that just because you're in the same college, you know what each other means, right? We know, or you know what everything, you know what the words mean, that your perception of something is the same as their perception of. You can't do that. It's important. I mean, obviously there's some things that in pop culture that y'all know about, but then there are other things that might be specific to your lived experience. And so when we say guard against bypassing is don't assume meaning, be able to communicate clearly and clarify things for people, right? Be concrete and precise means, concrete means not abstract. Be specific. Provide examples. This is how you guard against bypassing, is helping people. The idea is you want to be understood. So help people understand you by giving them enough information so people can understand you. All right. When you're working in a group, think about how you're going to organize your comments. Remember, in group, time is valuable, right? Time is valuable because you have all these minds working together. And you really want to make the best use of that time while you're together, because you'll have to go out and work probably individually to go get things to bring back to the group. Think about that systems theory, right? The general systems theory about inputs and outputs, that kind of thing. So I want you to think that while you're talking to the group, think about what you're going to say before you, it means organize your remarks to the current discussion that will be helpful. Try to make one point at a time. You can also be a person that helps members stay on topic. Don't be afraid to do that, right? Again, time is valuable. You don't have endless amount of time. Time is valuable. So use it appropriately and don't be afraid to remind people that's important in a nice, kind way. Okay. How else do we be sensitive to others? How do we do that? How do we know be sensitive to others and still be ourselves? Avoid things like, avoid what we call trigger words. So trigger words are like things that are motivated, or that are words that trigger emotions in people. So when you speak in extremes, or speak in like what we call black and white, like it's either completely or not at all. Like when we talk in those ways, that triggers people's emotions, right? So be sensitive to the fact that you might be triggering people's emotional reactions and how you talk about things. We're not just talking about being sensitive to the language you use when you talk about it. It's like, how do you say it? In what tone do you say it in? Obviously, don't name call. Name calling never works. It's not only insensitive, it's completely disrespectful. And that's a good way to create a really negative climate in your group. Okay. Follow the rules of your group. Know what they are. Know what is your group agreed upon. Hopefully by now, you had to do that in the beginning of the semester. And now I hope that you will have figured out, like, what have you agreed upon the rules for your current group? What does code switching mean? It means, how do you know different settings require different things? So in class, you act a certain way. In fact, I've seen it, right? When I put you in groups, and how I notice how you act with each other versus when I approach, whether it's online or in the classroom, when I approach you, it's like I can tell you guys stop talking, right? So you are able to code switch and able to act appropriately in different situations. But that's what that means. But also be cognizant that you're doing that and be aware that other people have the same code switching that you do. And I'm going to go back here. Informal settings, act formal. In informal settings, you don't have to worry about acting formal, but be considerate. Class, when you're in class and you're doing presentations, that's a formal setting. You know, the expectation of you being on your good behavior and acting appropriately is important. Okay, nonverbal communication. We are going to, I don't have much time with this, so I've got enough time to talk about it. So what is nonverbal communication? It's about our body language, right? So it's how we express our feelings non-verbally. We do that. It's in our facial expressions. It communicates what kind of relationship we have with people, right? How we talk to them, the tone of our voice. It acts as a supplement for words. So in addition to what we're saying, it's how we say it and what kinds of body language we give, facial expressions, whether we touch someone while we're talking, that communicates information as well. Sometimes it's a substitute for words, right? Sometimes, you know, instead of yelling hi across the street, you wave your hand. We know that means hello, right? There are other things that you can do that mean other things, and you got them already in your mind. But it can be a substitute for words. It can regulate the flow of communication. So raising your hand can stop the flow of it regulates the flow of communication. If a teacher is lecturing and you raise your hand, it will oftentimes stop the flow of that communication and then focus on you. So there's different things that you can do in which it regulates the flow of communication. Okay. And oftentimes, think about this, times when someone's words contradicted how they acted. What does that mean and what does that do for you? Just something to think about. And did you know that there's a lot of discussion about how much is communication nonverbal? And no one's really come to an agreement on that. What I can tell you is it's definitely more than 50%. It's probably in the range of between 70 and 80%. I want you to think about that for a minute. 70 to 80% of communication between people is without words. And a lot of nonverbal communication is completely subconscious on both ends. Subconscious to the recipient who's picking up the signals and subconscious to the person sending the signals. They're not even aware. It goes back to that idea. We cannot not communicate. We cannot not communicate. Okay, categories. Personal appearance. Proxemics is a study of how people use space, right? People that are intimate, know each other well, will sit closer to each other. Facial expressions communicate a lot. They're also culturally bound, but there are certain things that when people smile, you want to smile back. It makes you smile. Eye contact, that's also culturally bound. In some cultures, it's important to make eye contact. In other cultures, it's a sign of disrespect if you do it. How you move your body says how comfortable you are in your body, right? Your ability to move it, whether you're stiff or whether you're comfortable in your body. Athletes usually move their body. They're comfortable in their body. They're used to being in their body. Your voice, your pitch, your volume, your articulation, your ability to pronounce words. Pronunciation can go to, are you a second language speaker? Or are you someone, it goes to your education. There's all kinds of things that you can arrive at some meaning about someone based upon certain things, these nonverbal things. So that basically gets you on to when we look at nonverbal communication, what it means, and all these pieces, just as important as verbal communication. Have a great one. I will talk to you soon.